Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Rockies Daily. I'm your host, Scott Ayers, where we talk all things Colorado Rockies. And to start things off today, we're talking about the second base position because let's face it, we've talked about it on this show before. Do the Rockies go and try to sign someone? Do the Rockies go and try to trade for someone? Truth be told, there's a chance they don't do either of those things before players report for spring training. And so it takes us to this next step of, okay, who is most likely to be the starting second baseman for the Colorado Rockies when the season starts? And you go back and forth between who's on the roster right now. You look at someone like Amador, who has done just about nothing outside of struggle at the major league level. He's struggled in the winter league he's been playing in, and truthfully has not shown the flashes that I think a lot of us were expecting him to show. Meanwhile, we have Ryan Ritter, and Ryan Ritter could be the guy who is the starting second baseman for the Rockies come the 2026 season. Now, Ritter made his MLB debut last year, and honestly started out with a bang. In his first game, and his first MLB hit was a triple. And he came in to play in replacement of Tovar. So he kind of came in and made the most of his opportunity before dealing with injuries himself. Had about 270 at-bats, where he hit 240, had a 630 OPS, and 340 slugging. And truthfully, he's probably the best option right now that the Rockies have to play second base. And that's not a bad thing. There is one thing to be said about having a team that is obviously younger, more inexperienced, is you're going to give guys an opportunity to prove themselves that they can play at a major league level. And so for Ritter, it really does feel like this is a golden opportunity for him to start at second. He's known for being a shortstop, but I think with Tovar, there's just no way he's going to play short for the Rockies unless Tovar is injured. But there is a great opportunity to be the starting second baseman for the Rockies. That position, that and first feel wide open right now. Kyle Karros feels like right now he's going to be the guy to play third, but I wouldn't say that's just locked in either. It's a little more locked in than what we're seeing at second or first. But for Ritter, I think this is a tremendous opportunity for him. And what a great opportunity to also bounce off of that rookie campaign, right? Where he did have some signs of success, but also obviously had struggles as well, which is to be expected for a guy who's making his major league debut. And we saw that a lot for a lot of guys on the Rockies last year. So 2026 being a year of development isn't a bad thing if these guys actually develop. For Ryan Ritter, he's going to have that opportunity, especially if the Rockies don't sign any vets to play second or to play really anywhere in the middle infield. They're going to rely on these younger guys to figure it out. And there's not a better opportunity than for Ritter right now to not only earn a starting spot, but to have an opportunity to thrive and a team that just needs some guys that can possibly thrive. And that's obviously the hope at the second base position. When we talk about guys who can thrive or are promising, and I did want to note one guy who was probably one of my favorite Rockies of the last decade, and that's German Marquez. And the end of his tenure for the Rockies just didn't really feel right. It didn't feel like the end that you wanted to see. Obviously, you wanted more playoff appearances. You wanted him to have a dominant start in the playoffs. And in reality, it was just the one start against the Brewers in the playoffs that Marquez got. And Marquez is just one of the many stories that the Rockies, I feel like, have with their pitchers. Where at one point he was kind of seen as the hidden gem of the MLB, where a lot of people were interested in Marquez and what he was able to bring. From 2018 to 2021, he really had a really strong stretch. 2021, he was named an All-Star. 2022, he still had a under 5 ERA, and he still provided a ton of starts for the Rockies. But he was really, really kind of that ace for that Rockies rotation alongside Kyle Freeland. which was just a really fun 1-2 pair. But then obviously he needs Tommy John in 23, kind of re-aggravates that in 24, and really just kind of goes out with a whimper in 2025 as he's recovering from these injuries. And so we note German Marquez just because it feels like he really is a what could have been, as well as what would he have been had he really pitched anywhere else. Because I swear we do this where we talk about these inflated numbers for hitters at Coors Field, but we never talk about the pitchers who have inflated numbers in a negative way that really are good or great starting pitchers. And I think Marquez falls in that category of being a good, if not really good, starting pitcher who just happened to pitch at a really difficult place. And that obviously will then affect you how you can pitch on the road sometimes. But for Marquez, obviously the end of his tenure in Colorado, what you would have loved to see is obviously, the Rockies make the playoffs and he has a dominant appearance. Also, the second most, the second best option is he has a great season and the Rockies deal him and they can go on a deep postseason run with someone else. And we didn't get either of those things. Still currently a free agent. And you hope that someone just takes a chance on him, some sort of minor league contract or something, just to give him an opportunity to pitch one more time, just to prove that he has something. But it could be near the end for Marquez. But I just felt like it was important to note and talk about a guy who really does kind of deserve a tip of the cap from all Rockies fans for all that he did for the Rockies. And it just stinks to see how he went out. But obviously, we move on from Marquez to just overall starting pitching for the Colorado Rockies because front office has made it known that they are looking for starting pitching and they're looking for guys that can have some sort of an impact for the Rockies. And for Colorado, there's a couple of different tiers in which they can pursue pitching. First of which is obviously just developing through the farm system. And they have done that. That's really been their main success for having some type of starting pitching, right? And obviously that can sometimes be guys that they trade for that are in the farm system that they bring up, right? So some trades for farm system pitching, but right, it's a lot of guys that they're just developing up to be professional starters. Second of which is obviously making trades, right? Trading most likely for guys that are in the farm system, right? They don't typically trade for top pitchers that are at the major league level. And that's kind of what they're running into now is they really just don't have the assets to trade for pitching that can make an impact, right? You think of Cabrera on the Marlins. You think of Mackenzie Gore, Freddie Peralta. These are all guys that, the teams that respectively have them have said, hey, they might be available for trade at the prices right. And the Rockies just don't have the chips to push in to trade for pitchers like that, nor does it make sense because they're still building out the rotation. Getting a guy like Mackenzie Gore, it's like, hey, we already have 3 pretty good pitchers. Mackenzie Gore gives us 4 good pitchers, and now we're going to be a pretty competitive team. Rockies just don't have that, and so it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Unless you're obviously getting, a great deal out of it, and you have that pitcher for a long period of time. So then we obviously go into free agency, which the Rockies have signed 3 free agent pitchers since 2021 that are at the major league level. And so that will be the biggest thing for this front office is prove that they can be different than what we've seen from the Rockies of the past. Because 3 guys at the major league level that, just haven't made a difference for Colorado. That being said, I think right now you could see them maybe going after a younger pitcher, but I think it's going to be more of a value get right now for Colorado as they build out this rotation. And one guy that could be interesting that could honestly be more of a bullpen get, but he will give you innings is Nick Martinez. Nick Martinez, he's not going to be overly dominant, and he's not going to be, the ace that you might hope from like a free agent signing. But if you need a guy who can give you a ton of innings, both in the bullpen and as a starting pitcher, Nick Martinez can do that. And I mentioned him because that's kind of the tier of pitchers that you're looking at for the Rockies right now, right? They're not going to look at Framber Valdez or Ranger Suarez or anything like that. They're just not going to look at those guys. One, because those pitchers probably aren't interested to begin with, right? Pitchers in their prime aren't going to look to go to a team that won, 43, 44 games. On top of that, if you are looking at pitchers that tier, you're probably also going to have to overpay compared to some of these other teams just to convince them to come to Colorado. So that's where you kind of go down another tier and you look at someone like Nick Martinez, who very well could also say, hey, I'm getting older. I want to try to pitch for a competitive team. But if he's not fielding any offers, that's where the Rockies might swoop in for someone like Martinez. So something to consider. Those are the guys that you're probably going to look at for the Rockies. And maybe they do make a really big swing at a top free agent, but we'll just kind of have to wait and see. And then finally, let's end with kind of the silver lining for the Rockies here, and that is last year they had actually some pretty solid relievers, and one of which is Victor Vodnik, who's obviously a younger reliever, who, I think the sky is the limit for someone like that. And then obviously Jimmy Herget, who had his best season ever as a relief pitcher, had a 2.48 ERA, about 81 strikeouts and 83 innings pitched, and that is a success story that the Rockies can hang their hat on. So when that they signed that, you weren't really sure what to expect or what he was going to bring to the table, and he was phenomenal. And Victor Vodnik had a really great campaign for the Rockies, and so the reason why we mentioned the bullpen is obviously you want to have a solid bullpen, but if the Rockies have the struggles in 26, like you're expecting them to most likely have, these are some of those poker chips that you can use for trades, right? These are guys that you could deal at the deadline for teams that are making some sort of postseason push. Obviously, I think you'd obviously want to look to hold on to Vodnik just because he's a younger reliever. But it's just a satisfying feeling to know, hey, we've actually got some guys in this bullpen that were solid overall, that are guys we can rely on going into the next season. And that's who both these guys are heading into 2026. And I think in 26, we're going to be looking for more of these silver linings of pitchers who, and not just pitchers, but players in general who are developing well for the Rockies. We kind of mentioned it with Ryan Ritter. That's going to be what we figure out. And this front office still might make a move before the season starts in terms of signing someone. But what you see is kind of what you're going to get going into the season. And some of that is exciting, just to get this young bunch of goofballs and see how they develop and how they play. But until next time, I'm Scott Ayers. Thank you so much for listening and watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow.